Hello, beautiful souls. Happy Monday morning. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, wherever you are across space and time. Thank you for joining me here on this broadcast. I love to share my mindfulness practice with my community on Monday mornings. And I hope that this topic on self-care, self-love, and self-compassion will be of value to you and that you'll find space in your busy day or busy week to apply these three powerful tools to your own process of growth and transformation. I'm just going to grab my tea and then we'll get started. So I had the opportunity to travel last week. I live here in Costa Rica, and every 90 days I have to leave the country or cross the border, actually, just to renew my visa. And I decided to go to Panama last week and to go down on the Pacific coast instead of the Caribbean coast. There's two border crossings, and I've done the Caribbean side already, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought about doing that again. But I was really interested in what's going on the Pacific side, and I wanted to try a new adventure. So I gave myself the gift, really, of doing something new, and it was awesome. There was some fear around doing something new. People always ask me when I'm traveling alone, "Why you're traveling alone?" with surprise, and so that itself has made me nervous to travel alone, even though it's not something that comes from in me, the nerves around that. It's really just internalized from other people being surprised about a woman traveling alone in Central America. Buenos días, Vanessa. Un día pronto voy a hablar en español. Es que en las mañanas y cuando estoy solita cuesta un poco salir del español, pero tengo ganas de hacer videos en español también. Puedo introducir el tópico, el tema de hoy, tal vez, por lo menos en español. Estamos hablando de cuidar a uno mismo y amor propio y compasión para nosotros mismos. Y estoy introduciendo este tema porque para muchos no pensamos mucho en cómo cuidamos a nuestro mismo. Es más importante y más común pensar y hablar en cómo cuidar al resto, al demás, al resto del mundo. Y faltamos mucho cuando no pensamos en cuidar a nosotros. Y he aprendido detrás de mi experiencia propia que el cuidado propio tiene adentro el amor propio y compasión propio. Y es decir que el cuidado propio es como una paraguas, una sombrilla, dentro de que viene el amor propio y compasión para nuestro mismo. Okay, I'm going to go back to English now and then probably do more videos in Spanish another time. So on this trip to Panama, I learned to see my activities of self-love and self-compassion through a different lens. And I think that's the really powerful thing about traveling is it takes us out of our current or more common habitual state, and it helps us to see ourselves and the world differently. And I was invited to teach about the difference between self-care and self-compassion. Um, Pluto is having a loud morning. That's my kitten, for any of you who don't know him yet. Hi, Lou. Thank you. And so I was invited to teach about the difference between the two, and I was really excited actually by the opportunity. And so as I was preparing all last week for the Friday and Saturday night when I was invited to give this these talks, I started to make a list of all the different ways that I was being compassionate to myself or loving to myself. And as I was going through, actually, I started off making the list of when I was being compassionate and when I was being caring. So I started off observing what things I did that were considered self-care and what things I did that were considered self-compassion. And what I found was actually the things that I called self-care were really self-love, and both the self-compassion and the self-love were together under this bubble or umbrella of self-care. So I thought it was really helpful to do a little exploration of the difference between these things, and I can share some of my own examples with you, and hopefully you'll feel some inspiration to take really good care of yourself. So a lot of times in our world, it's considered selfish to ask for things or just to take care of ourselves. It's valued more than anything else. This altruistic or martyring approach to taking care. And when we have a more balanced understanding of what care is for ourselves, then it's easier to care for ourselves. And basically, this is just a taboo subject in our society, and I wanted to shed some light on it from my own experience today. Yay, thank you for joining me. So we have self-compassion first. I have learned a lot about self-compassion through my own struggles in life. This is the best way to develop self-compassion, is just to take a look at what you're struggling with and be soft and be gentle. Self-compassion is the soft, nurturing aspect of self-care, where if we compare it to self-love, that is the disciplined and more solidified, objectified aspect of self-care. So these are like two sides of the self-care coin. And an example of self-compassion that I can give you from my experience is from this trip I took to Panama. I was sitting in the bus station getting ready to take the bus down to the border, and it was around noon. The bus hadn't showed up. I expected it to be there at 11, and I was just supposed to pay the conductor, so if I missed it, there was no recourse, and it was just like a tense moment for me because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I was sitting there feeling stressed and worried. When's this bus going to come? Is it going to come? Am I going to get to the border? Am I going to be able to cross tonight? What's going to happen if I can't? Are my plans going to have to be changed because of the bus system? And I was feeling all this fear, and I was observing it and being somewhat critical, because I've been practicing letting go of fear and surrendering to the flow of life for years. I was in Philadelphia in 2013 practicing, okay, if I miss the bus, it's for a reason, and it's okay. Even before then, I was practicing letting go of this need to control and grasp, consciously, mindfully. And so to be here 7 years later, still struggling with the fact that a bus may or may not come, was frustrating for me. So I was sitting with the fear. It was very real. And I was remembering all these times I've committed to the will of God, for example, as a way we can name it, or just surrendering to the flow of life. And I still felt the strong gripping. And then what I had to realize, which I was only able to do through compassion, was that there was no problem there. There was no problem. There was nothing I could do. Everything actually was perfect. And the experience of feeling stress and worry was like the sword being pulled out, where all of this control and struggle that I had habitually identified with was leaving me, and I was experiencing it as it left. And so I just remembered that emotions feel often more intense right before they leave. So remembering that and sitting with that remembrance was a compassionate thing to do in that moment. So something you can ask yourself this week is, what's the compassionate thing to do? A lot of times we struggle making decisions, and I find it helpful to have a guideline or some kind of thing to fall back on. And I want to suggest that this question can be your guide. What's the most compassionate thing to do? So compassion is like the chocolate cake to the salad of self-love. So if we think about a chocolate cake and a salad, traditional wisdom might say that you don't need the chocolate cake and it's not good for you. But my wisdom says that sometimes chocolate cake is the absolute best thing for me, and it improves my quality of life so much if I just eat that little chocolatey delight. And that's more along the lines of compassion than anything else. Just giving ourselves what we enjoy and living in our highest joy. That's really what self-compassion is, and it comes from a deep respect for ourselves as a being, as a person. So doing things that we like, that's self-compassionate. And sometimes we definitely need that salad, and we definitely need self-love. And so the thing to do here is to find a balance, to find a healthy balance between the chocolate cake and the salad, so that we can have that really rich quality of life that we all deserve. And sometimes not doing the disciplined self-care strategy is the compassionate thing to do. For example, you might have a discipline of not using social media, or of not watching television to distract yourself. But you might decide one day that the compassionate thing to do is actually put on a funny movie, or to watch a TV show that inspires you and makes you feel a certain good kind of way. And that would be self-compassion. I'm going to read my list here of self-compassion strategies, and it's just to inspire, and I will share more in a post, probably in our group Epic Ensoulment. So that is something that everybody is welcome to join, and it's where you can guaranteed never miss one of these videos, and we just share inspiring and motivational and uplifting content that will help us all to connect and tune in with our journey to ensoulment, our connection to our higher self and our soul. So if you want to be compassionate to yourself, you might rest whenever you want to. Just take a break. You might buy something that's both beautiful and useful, like a tapestry for sitting on the beach. Arguably not something you need, but extremely useful and brings a lot of joy if you get a pattern that is beautiful to you. You can spend time by the water. You can choose to leave a conversation or start a conversation. The first one was really powerful when I did it. I was trying to go somewhere and somebody came up and started trying to talk to me, and I was like, you know what, I'm really sorry, I actually have to go. So we'll talk later. I'll be back. And then starting a conversation is compassionate towards ourselves because it recognizes that we need human interaction. We need to connect with other people. And to just, sit there and stare out the window on the bus is sometimes a compassionate action because maybe you just want to be alone. But maybe the thing to do is to recognize that you're human, that person's a human, and sharing a smile and some friendly conversation is going to improve your quality of life for both of you. You can wear things that make you feel good, like patterns and colors and styles and accessories that you like. That's a compassionate thing to do because you're respecting your feelings of feeling good. Being grateful is a compassionate thing to do. Sometimes, though, as much as it's important to practice gratitude, it's also important to give ourselves the space to not be grateful if we don't feel grateful. Some of us have been through really terrible things that it's impossible to ignore in favor of gratitude. So if you are consciously ungrateful, that can be a compassionate practice. It's called conscious complaining. And just being aware of how ungrateful we are for all of the fucking shit that life has given us is compassionate to ourselves. It's acknowledging that we have feelings, that we're humans. And then on the other hand, being super grateful for the tea in your cup or the friends around you or the furry cat under your bed, that is a very powerful practice for self-compassion. Being patient is a compassionate thing to do. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to be patient. I experience that a lot. And I'm here to tell you that the only remedy for a lack of patience is patience. So if you can't be patient, just observe that and have that be your self-compassion practice. Speaking your mind and expressing yourself is a compassionate thing to do. When we have ideas or thoughts and we just kind of push them away or push them to the side, that's disrespecting ourselves. And if you have an idea like, actually, I think the boundary is over there, and you stand up and you say to the people that you're with on your site visit, like, no, actually, I'm looking at the drawing and I see that there's a line and it should be a lot farther back than this fence. I don't think this fence is the line. You stand up and express yourself. That's a compassionate thing to do. Sharing your heart and your home is a compassionate thing to do for yourself. So opening your heart to cats, for example, or whatever pets you have in your home, that is self-compassion because it's recognizing, again, your interconnectedness with all of life and having this little element of nature in your home to remind you of your true nature is going to bring so much joy and beauty to your life. The same goes for friends or family. If you open your home to them, you're actually taking care of yourself in a very real way. But conversely, we need to protect our hearts too. And that's something that we often don't think about. And the act of protecting our heart allows us to be vulnerable. And the more we protect ourselves, the more we can open. and opening our heart, turning towards pain is a compassionate thing to do, to recognize that maybe we're scared and we don't know what's going to happen is something that we can do for our inner child. And a lot of times we want to work directly with our inner child, and he or she isn't ready for that. We have to practice a lot of loving kindness and self-compassion in order to get to a place many times that we can really truly connect with our inner child in a way that makes us feel safe. So self-compassion is all about building safety from the inside out. So there really is no safety outside of us in the world. Everything is change. There's no solidity around us to grab onto. So holding ourselves in compassion is the way to build internal safety. And we just keep showing up for ourselves, and we keep showing up for ourselves. And that's what self-care is about, building congruency in the world. So a couple more examples of self-compassion is observing your breath and other sensations to perceive the experience of being in a body. This is extreme self-compassion, to just witness your sensations and say, I'm feeling tension. I'm feeling ease. I feel sensation. These are ways to observe our being, to really be in our body, and to perceive the experience of being human. If we just pretend we're not human, if we just pretend that we're machines and we can do anything and there's no limits, then that's not a very compassionate attitude to take towards ourselves. Another compassionate thing that you can do for yourself is find your core values and stick to them. So this one is probably the core of self-compassion. Finding your core values and always holding them true. For me, it's truth. Truth is my core value. I can't abide by anything that's not true. And that helps me to stay in touch with myself. Learning and growth are core values for me. So I always choose, because I know that innately learning and growth are very dear to me and very important values to me. Whenever I have to make a choice about what the compassionate thing to do is, I'll lean towards my values. I'll lean towards learning and growth. I'll go to the new location in Panama instead of the one that's familiar that I've done before, for example. So sometimes we have this little inner voice that challenges us in our compassion practice. This voice can send us into spirals of shame or inner guilt trips. And you might find that this voice just comes up out of nowhere and is like, should you really be doing that? Is that really clean enough? Oh, you forgot to do this again. That little voice must be stopped if we're going to practice self-compassion. The most compassionate thing we can do is tell that voice no. Saying no to shame and guilt is the most compassionate thing we can do for ourselves, oftentimes. And stopping that shame spiral and the inner guilt trip on site. The moment that you recognize that this is shame, this is guilt, and it's coming from inside of me, call upon your self-compassion and stop it. Shame and guilt are not natural emotions. They are artificially implanted by a sick society. They are not part of the human experience in a natural way. And you deserve to be free of them. We all do. And recognizing that is self-compassion. So this is the one side of the coin. This is the soft and gentle side of self-care. Now I'm going to switch to self-love and talk about the objectified, solidified aspect of self-care. So these are things that we can see visibly, like moving to a different seat on the bus if you're really cold or you don't have enough room to stretch out. So this is a way that we take care of ourselves in a loving way. It's not considered compassion. It comes from the fact that we have compassion for ourselves, but it's directly caring for ourselves. And putting on uplifting music is another example of directly caring for ourselves. We're actively changing our vibration. Talking to a friend is an act of self-love. Instead of isolating ourselves, we reach out and we say, hey, this is what's going on. How are you? And the same way that taking care of someone else we love is actually taking care of ourselves and giving ourselves love. So I notice this when I'm taking care of my cats. I am receiving hormones that are uplifting when I take care of them, when I feed them and I pet them and I clean their litter box. I know that by taking care of them, I am taking care of myself. And I felt the same thing when I took care of my brother. Oftentimes, I knew innately that by taking care of his emotional well-being, I was taking care of myself. And that was the best thing I could do in those moments to take care of myself. Writing down your ideas, your goals, and your dreams is self-care and self-love. Self-love is also self-respect. And when we write down our ideas, instead of just like saying like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and then like moving on to the next thing, then we show ourselves love and value what's come through us, what's just been channeled into us. The same with your goals, it makes them concretized when you write them down. And when you write down your dreams in a dream journal, your subconscious responds and says, oh, my dreams are important, and you'll start to get more dreams that have more interesting significance. So that's an act of self-love. Another act of self-love that I practice, and I think probably everybody should, is to do something for your spiritual growth. I find that when I don't do something in this category for a long time, I feel it. I notice when I haven't checked the astrology for a long time, or I haven't pulled out my tarot cards, or I haven't been carrying around any crystals, or practicing meditation or prayer. There's a lot of different things that fall into the category of something for your spiritual growth. But really, everybody needs to be taking care of themselves in this way, to be loving their spirit in this way, in an active way. It's really powerful. Something that I do that's very loving for myself is choosing not to own a car. So I've constructed my life in a way that I don't need a car, which is really contrary to how I grew up in the United States. I take care of myself by not having a car because I notice that my life has to be a lot slower, since I can't just jump in the car and go do whatever thing pops into my head whenever it pops into my head. I'd have to call an Uber if I wanted to go somewhere far away, or pack my bag to walk down the hill if that's what I wanted to do. And it makes the pace of my life way slower and actually contributes to my health a great deal. So I noticed that my cortisol levels are lower, and because I don't have to get behind the wheel and put my life at risk. I don't have to worry about all the people in 2-ton metal boxes flying around. If the other person is driving, they can worry about that. So I show myself love by not owning a car. I think I could make it work financially, and I think it would be somewhat easier in certain ways, but I find it very loving to myself to not engage in owning an automobile, because they just take so much time and money and stress. So something else that I never knew was a self-love thing or a self-care thing is wearing supportive shoes. Nobody ever, like, I was 25. No, I was 26 before I had a pair of shoes that were actually comfortable. And I never thought even about how uncomfortable my feet were. I didn't even, like, I thought just having like sore feet was the way life was. And when I went to this store called the Walking Company, where you can walk across this pad, and it like checks out your arch and your sole pressure, and then they'll match you with the right insole for your feet. I was blown. My mind was blown. Like, this is what it feels like to have comfortable feet? Like, shoes can be comfortable? I had no idea. It was so frustrating that I had been through so much of life with unhappy feet, but now I know. And my whole life is different because I don't buy shoes that don't feel good anymore. And that is just such a radical change. And so please love yourself through your feet. Buy shoes that are actually comfortable, because you deserve comfortable feet. You do. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. Similarly, you deserve to have a relaxed body. So if you've been sitting for a long time, stand up. That's a self-care strategy. Just standing up every once in a while. Like on the bus, every 45 minutes, I set an alarm and I stand up on the bus and I just hold on to the railing. Same if you've been sitting at your computer. This is a little harder because we get wrapped up in what we're doing. But if we're really committed to self-love and self-care, we have to do this. We have to move our bodies instead of being sedentary all the time. Stretching your back and your hips, giving a little rotation is such a game changer. It's so powerful, and we don't really think about it. You might also want to try shaking. So you could try shaking your hips. That's a really fun, cool practice. And I highly recommend it. There's so many different things that we can do to love ourselves. One big one is moving on. So if there's something that really hurts us that happens in our life, and we're really serious about healing from it, sometimes the most healing thing to do is just to let go and to move on. For example, if somebody's really hurt you, it is possible to move on and to salvage your quality of life. And that's a self-loving thing to do. So all of these things that I've described fall under the umbrella of self-care. And something you might want to try this week is committing to self-care, committing to taking care of yourself. And if you want to celebrate any wins about this, please do join the group Epic Ensoulment so I can celebrate you and our community can celebrate you. And you might also want to try making a list, your own list of self-love versus self-compassion strategies. And just remember, the more objectified salad self-care strategies are self-love, and then the softer, more gentle self-care strategies akin to the chocolate cake or cookie are your self-compassion strategies. And just writing down this list for me, it was really empowering to see like all the different little minuscule ways that I'm taking care of myself every day. And it really made me feel loved by myself. It made me feel committed to myself, and it helped me to witness how much I'm putting in to my well-being. And sometimes just seeing that is all we need to make a change in our vibration, to vibrate in a higher way, in a more positive way. That's really what this whole life thing is about, isn't it? It's about enjoying our lives, and when we're in joy, that is the highest vibration that we know. Gratitude and forgiveness, these are also really high vibrations. That I think joy is one that we all need a little help studying. And so I'd love it if you had questions. It'd be so fun to continue this conversation. If you have any feedback, um, I'm really excited to hear it. And I just hope to be of service to you, beloved, on this journey through this incredible adventure called life. We're not alone. We're all going through this together. I'm going to see if this feels complete for a second. Yes, it does. I hope you have a beautiful week filled with all the self-care possible, more self-care than you've ever experienced in your life. If you have been not cared for by your parents, by your lover, if anyone has not given you the care you deserved, this is the way to fight back. To give yourself that care is the way to move forward with happiness and joy in your heart. So that's my wish for you. Many blessings, beloveds. Until next time.